Okay, so this is our first time doing this year. This is my boards go up, please, home style, home version. So the way this works is normally we'd be doing these problems in class. This would be like kind of the end or the start of most classes. But when we're doing this asynchronous work, I will use this type of structure to sort of replace the board work that we would have had in class. And I think it works pretty well. So today we are focusing on product rule, quotient rule, and trig derivatives. We know a couple trig derivatives, and we're going to work out a couple more. Things you are allowed to use are these guys here. You're allowed to use power rule because we've learned that already. The derivative of e to the x is e to the x. You should have done that over the summer. Same with ln of x. That derives to 1 over x. I'm using a shorthand notation with these primes instead of a dx notation, but it's just a little bit easier to write this. Sine derives to cosine. Cosine derives to negative sine. Tan derives to secant squared. Secant x derives to secant x tangent x. All right, so the way this works is I hopefully will make a document for you that has some timestamps, and it'll be the beginning of each problem. So our first problem is this one right here. The way that I want you to do this, underneath that little post-it right there that I have, is the full solution to this thing. And what I want you to do when I say go is find this derivative. Well, sorry, I should say it. I want you to pause the video and find this derivative. Find f prime of x. Okay, and then you hit play. I will wait a moment, and then I'll slide the post-it out of the way so that you can see the answer and the solution. If you get the answer correct, then you can just go on. If you made some error and you see it, then you're good, and you can go on. If you made some error, or if you just want to listen to me explain what we did, because you need to hear it again, then, or you need to hear how that problem works, then you can go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say go, and I want you to pause the video and find the derivative of this thing. Notice they are being multiplied, so you're going to use what rule? Product rule. All right, so pause, find the derivative. Okay, I'm going to slide the answer now. So you should have gotten, this is the final answer. So 10x to the fourth minus 3x squared plus 8x. Maybe you just wrote this, and if you did that, you're doing the calculus correct. The reason why I take it down to this guy is because if this is like a multiple choice question on an AP test or something like that, then they're going to go to this guy right here, right? That's the one that's going to be there. So derivative of the first, derivative of this guy is 4x times the second. Derivative of this guy is 3x squared times the first. Then I do some distribute some things in. Two things with fourth powers, and I got this guy here. So hopefully that one is good. I'm going to pause for a moment myself. Okay, question 2. Here I have g of x is x to the fifth all over sine x plus 1. So I want you to find this derivative. This one is a quotient rule problem, but don't hit pause yet. I need to tell you something. A lot of times with these quotient rule problems, I don't care if you simplify it. In the previous one, I wanted you to simplify down to this, right? So with this quotient rule, you can leave it after the first step of taking the derivative. Oops. So go ahead, hit pause, find the derivative. Here comes the answer. Hopefully you've hit pause and you found the derivative. Let me just go like this. All right. Do this. Okay, so notice I didn't simplify it at all. I'm just leaving it like that, which is totally acceptable for you guys. So g prime of x is, notice in black here I wrote L for low, and then d high is high prime minus high low prime over low or low squared, right? So this is the denominator. This is the derivative of x to the fifth, that guy. minus high x to the fifth, derivative of the denominator, sine x goes to cosine, derivative of 1 is nothing, so just get a cosine x, and then low, sine x plus 1. Hopefully you're good with that one. I will go to the next. Go like this. All right, h of x is e to the x times tangent x. So let's see if you can find this thing's derivative. Yep, you're using product. Pause. Okay, here comes the answer. In the box there. So you could, this answer here would be totally acceptable. This might be how they would write on the AP test if it was multiple choice. You'd want to get to this answer. But h prime of x is e to the x tan x plus secant squared x times e to the x. That's, you know, it's weird because I got this e to the x and that e to the x, but remember, the derivative of e to the x is itself. So I can factor that e to the x and get e to the x times tan x plus secant squared x. All right, here comes the next one. Yeah. So I want you to use quotient rule to figure out the derivative of cotangent of x. Hopefully we just did a problem real similar to this in class. Hopefully we did the derivative of tangent x. As you can imagine, the work for the derivative of tangent x is probably pretty similar to the work for the derivative of cotangent x. I did the first step for you, which is to split it into a quotient rule problem. And notice this is the quotient rule problem for which I know the derivative of cosine and I know the derivative of sine. So I can actually take the derivative of this because I know quotient rule and I know the derivative of the two parts. So hit pause. Okay, here comes your answer. All right. Oh, so I should just, I'm going to go like this. Oops, so you can see the whole thing. All right, so this is the answer at the end, negative cosecant squared of x. So if you got that, awesome. You can keep moving. If you didn't or you got close to that, you can look and see what I got here, what I did here, or you can just listen to me walk through it because I'm going to walk through the whole thing. So here we go. Sine x. Notice that is the low, right? It's low d high minus high d low over low, right? So I got low, which is sine, high prime. Well, high up there is cosine x. Derivative of cosine, negative sine, minus cosine x, that is high, times cosine x again, that's the derivative of the sine, all over sine squared x. From there, notice I got a sine times a sine, so that gives me sine squared. And I got a cosine times a cosine, which gives me cosine squared, all over sine squared. One common mistake here is to cancel those, but that is called breaking math. We can't do that. If we're in class, I'd give you more of an explanation to that. Maybe I did in our lesson earlier today. But what you should see with a little bit of manipulation is you could take a negative out of this and this to get this guy. And notice that gives me a sine squared plus a cosine squared. And oh snap, that is 1. That's a big simplification. So the negative gets applied to this, I get negative 1. So I have negative 1 over sine squared x. And remember, 1 over sine x is cosecant x. So this is really just cosecant squared, negative. This gets added to our chart of derivatives that you had up at the beginning. So if you want to add that, that's cool. All right, next one. All right, so question 5. Find the derivative in the same way of cosecant x. This is the last of our trig things to have the derivative of. So do this in the same way we did it in class for secant, hopefully, if we had time. We have d dx of cosecant x. Well, remember, cosecant is 1 over sine x. So instead of doing this, which I don't know how to do, I can turn it into a fraction for which I know the derivative of 1 and I know the derivative of sine. So pause, go ahead, do it. Okay, here we go. This is our answer right here. Negative cosecant x times cotangent x. You may have had this, but this is the standard way to write it. So, how do we get there? Well, I did low sine x, d high, the derivative of 1 is nothing. That's nice. This whole term goes away. Minus high, 1, d low, derivative of sine is cosine. So this guy's gone. This negative gets applied to that. So I get a negative cosine x. Oh yeah, and then over low is sine squared x. So I get a sine squared in the denominator there. From there, I split it up into two fractions like this. This is cosine. Basically, I'm splitting up these sines, right? Because there's two of them. So, the cosine here over one of these sines, which is this fraction, well, that's a cotangent. That's why I split it up like this, times 1 over sine. Well, what's 1 over sine? Go back up to here. 1 over sine is cosecant x. So, come down here. When I do all this simplification here, the negative comes along. This fraction becomes a cotan. This fraction becomes a cosecant. And then I flip them so that it's in the standard form that you would see in any textbook. So it's negative cosecant x, cotangent x. And okay, cool. So that's our last board work problem for today. Hopefully this system worked okay for you. Maybe you went through and you didn't have to listen to me talk to any of them. Maybe you listened to all of them, or maybe you're somewhere in between. Wherever it is, that's good for you. It'll help you learn it. So I will do one more video about what your homework is and how you are going to do it. So I will see you in that video.